This may be a little controversial on my behalf, but athletics is 100% the forefront in everything I do. I think January was kind of a real kind of refresher. So it's really kind of shaped the way that I've been trying to train and trying to kind of compete since then. I think it's been working. So there's still inroads and improvements that need to be made. Not gonna lie, I did have a little bit of a cry afterwards. It was just all of those emotions kind of came out after the 2 days of competition. It is kind of mentally kind of a slap in the face when things don't go well. But yeah, it's kind of been ups and downs this year, but I'm really kind of happy with the progression overall. And I also think that as a decathlete, I've matured. But I think the progression hopefully keeps going forwards. But hopefully this January coming, I can kind of hit at least some of the goals that I set in January this year.
So, Reef, how important would you say athletics is in your life when you consider the other things that are going on, such as your exams, like your prep for uni? Like, how important is athletics in helping you get to where you need to be in life, would you say?
Um, this may be a little controversial on my behalf, but athletics is 100% the forefront in everything I do. It's if I didn't have athletics, I honestly don't know where I would be. Um, yeah, I think it just holds everything together in my life. It's the one thing that I'll have if I have a tough day at school. At least I got to go to the track. I can kind of just relax. I know what I want to do. Um, Funny enough, as a decathlete, as out of control as some of the events can be, it's kind of the one part of my day or week where I do feel that kind of that amount of control over what I can do. Obviously, exams, work, kind of schooling, you don't really know what you want to do. You don't have even if you've got that structure, there's certain things that just can't go your way. Whereas in the track, it's me against me. So it's always, I think all athletics has just kind of helped me set goals and kind of just try and put into fruition what I want to do in life in general. It's helped with the school 100%.
So, thinking about the long term, then, so what would you hope to do? Like, would you hope for athletics? I think I know what the answer is going to be. Are you hoping to make a living out of that? Would you say?
Um, I want to try and push the athletics as far as I can get at university. I think for me, as a decathlete in this country, it's probably going to be the closest I can get to being a full-time athlete at the level I'm currently at. Um, I want to see how far I can get the decathlon while I'm at uni. If it doesn't go to plan as a decathlete, injuries and stuff like that, I may have to take a step away from athletics. But I always think that sports at some level is going to be very much at the forefront and something that I will really want to try and pursue as a career option, whether that be coming back to athletics as a coach or a sports scientist or someone around there, or whether that be going to different sports and trying to kind of spread some of the sports science knowledge and kind of the basics in fundamental athletics within other sports. I think it's definitely going to try and be at the forefront and something that I try and make a living out of.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, even if you're not a full-time athlete, like as you say, you can always do full-time coaching. I know that Harry Kendall does bits of that here and there as well. So there's options basically. Yeah, if that is what you want to do, then yeah, I'm sure there'll be something out there for you, especially if you're basically doing it at uni anyway with the degree you've chosen. Like, there should be something good coming out of it for you, surely. Um, so when we look back on your past few months and this season in general, you had the national combined events in January. But I know at the time you said it didn't quite go to plan for you. You weren't best pleased with your overall performance, unfortunately. But even though you got tackling 3B, like you still achieved a few things within that competition. So, how did you say that competition shaped the weeks and months that were to come for the rest of the season?
Um, I think January was kind of a real kind of refresher. and a place where I had to look at myself and kind of think, I know what I can be doing in all of these events, and I think I only hit my target on 2 or was close to them on 2. So it was obviously still a personal best, which I was very happy with. But that was kind of the event where I think if things had gone really well, I could have possibly gone somewhere properly this year, maybe gone to like one of the abroad events, maybe got myself an England vest. But that just wasn't to be that early on the year. I wasn't in that place with my training where I had that level of consistency. So it's really kind of shaped the way that I've been trying to train and trying to kind of compete since then, really trying to just kind of hit competition simulations throughout this kind of months afterwards. Because if I can't perform in comp when I need to perform in the deck, I'm just throwing away points. I'm just digging myself a hole. It's definitely been different way of training, kind of literally going down to the track and only doing a few jumps like you would in a comp, and then going on to the next event like you do in a deck. I think it's been working. Day one, this weekend that's just gone, proves that this is kind of going into the correct places. With big PB on day one of the deck. But I'm still looking at the results and thinking all of the results that I scored at this weekend were kind of the results that I wanted in January. So there's still inroads and improvements that need to be made, but it's just the kind of trying to hit those checkpoints, get closer to the good goals that I've been setting, and hopefully this January coming, I can kind of hit at least some of the goals that I set in January this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, I mean, any progress is good progress. I mean, as you say, like, you know, some of the results you got from this past weekend, like you would have aimed for some of those, like the beginning of this year. So, you know, you've obviously done something right with your training. Like, you've obviously put plans into place and acted on those plans, and that's got you to, well, in my eyes, a successful competition this past weekend. So, yeah, so it all seems to be falling into place for you, I would say. But how? So yeah, you were naturally disappointed in January based off of what you shared in the past. So how do you initially deal with that disappointment? How do you go away from a competition that you're not particularly pleased with, and then how do you learn from that? How do you take that experience into something positive for future competitions?
Um, yeah, during the multi events, obviously, it's quite emotional. One event, ups and downs, kind of swings and roundabouts. Try and kind of stay as calm as possible during the multi events, and then kind of afterwards, you kind of get all of those emotions in one big package. So like in January this year, not gonna lie, I did have a little bit of a cry afterwards. It was just all of those emotions kind of came out after the 2 days of competition. But yeah, you kind of just have to kind of take a big step back and look at where you are now, where you want to be, and then where you want to be in the next competition. I'm very lucky that I've got kind of a group where I train with, where I've got very skilled decathletes like Harry Kendall, I've got Lewis Church, so I can have conversations with them and see what they would do and kind of talk about what they think I should do, and kind of have an amalgamation on training and how I can take steps to get to that level of improvement. It is kind of mentally a kind of a slap in the face when things don't go well, but you kind of you don't want to have that again. So it's kind of it's quite rough, but you kind of want to try and do as much as possible that you don't end up getting that again and again throughout the season. I have had seasons in the past where it's literally been comp not go to plan, comp not go to plan, comp not go to plan. Things just going wrong left, right, and center. Remember a few years ago, I didn't PB in any of the events all year in the decathlon, and that's just soul destroying. But I was clearly doing something wrong, and now that I've got this great team down at Tonbridge with Harry and Lewis, it's so much easier to kind of get that level of improvement and kind of just get back to work after kind of an event that didn't go too greatly to plan.
Yeah, but you're only human. I mean, like the fact that this obviously means so much to you, and the fact that you were naturally as a combined eventer cramming so many events to win competition, you are naturally going to have those moments where you're disappointed, or things don't quite go the way you want them to go. But I think combined events, especially, they have it so tough, so tough, because I think people like yourself and other combined eventers can sometimes, like want a lot out of their competitions, which, naturally can be hard to achieve when you're trying to achieve so much in just one day or 2 days in some cases. So, but yeah, I mean, the fact that you're able to learn basically, as you say, like we're able to learn what went wrong because you recognize yourself that there were some things that you weren't quite implementing correctly for you to get the results you wanted. And like there has been that progression. So, for you to get where you are today when you weren't PBing like this time last year or the years before that, like it's a step in the right direction. So, but yeah, I'd like to say you're only human, and if things don't quite go your way, it's all natural to have a bit of a cry, to have a bit of a have to vent your frustrations and all that sort of stuff. So it's natural. It's natural. You had to balance your last year of A levels on top of your competitions as well. So could you tell me a little bit as to how you managed to balance those two things together? How did you find doing these really important exams while balancing this massive passion of yours at the same time?
Um, I was quite lucky with the way that my school have kind of taken the study leave approach. It was very much kind of we were in control. So I was basically on holiday for a couple of months before it, just studying. So it at least gave me that time where I was kind of very similar to training, just try and get solid blocks of each of the subjects and then just build that up over time. Yeah, there was a difficulty during the exams, I found, especially where I want to kind of, because I train in Tonbridge, that's an hour drive there, hour drive back. I'm getting back home 11, half 10 o'clock at night. If I've got an exam at 9 o'clock in the morning, that's not the greatest amount of sleep. Can't really do the revision when I get back. I'm not someone that's able to pull an all-nighter of revision before an exam. I think I'd fall asleep as soon as pen went to paper. Yeah, so it's kind of just looking at the timetables that I kind of end up thinking in my head, and then the timetables for the actual exams themselves, and just going, I'm going to have to miss this session and that session, and I'm going to have to take a step back from some of the gym work, stuff like that. And it's just kind of exams, I think, take more of a physical drain on your body than a lot of the athletes actually take knowledge to. They obviously acknowledge the mental aspect, the stress, but that has a huge effect on their sleep, just how they are physically more tired. And I know a lot of athletes that they try and push through it during the exam season and they end up getting injured. I think that you just need to kind of take a step back and kind of think, if I miss this session and I kind of just allow myself this more time to possibly get a bit more revision in, kind of recover physically and mentally, after the exams are over and done with, you're going to be in a better place. That's the approach that I had. And I think it was the right approach. I don't know. I could have plowed through training and had a huge score this weekend, but I could have flopped all my A levels. So we'll have to see how that all fans out. But yeah, I think it's a difficult time to try and balance athletics and the exams, because you're trying to peak at the two things in very similar times. Yeah, it's a difficult time, but everyone has their own way of managing it, and I think hopefully my method did work. Hopefully.
I mean, when you think about it, these exams that you just taken, they are so important. Obviously, like you do the GCSEs beforehand, which in itself is obviously quite important, but A levels, like they shape what uni you go to. They shape what opportunities are further down the line for you in a sense. So I know when you're an athlete, that must be so difficult when you want to devote all your time into what you're passionate about, and then they have those pesky exams that are in the way that basically ruin it all for you. You know, to be your age and have to deal with all of that at the same time. Like you must have had moments at times where, you know, like it got a bit too much, or which again would have been understandable because it's a lot to take on. You know, yeah, like you say, hopefully your approach was the correct one.
Yeah, if I go radio silent, it wasn't the right approach.
Now that that is over, for now at least, anyway, until you go to uni, and that's a whole other ball game, not to scare you. And you mentioned it briefly before, but you train with some brilliant athletes. I mean, Harry Kendall's one, Lewis Church is one, who I believe is still your coach, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a bit about what it's like to train with the people at Tonbridge AC. How influential are they, would you say, to the successes that you have in the competitions, or just your athletics in general?
I don't think I'd be anywhere near the level I am at the moment if I wasn't at Tonbridge. It was a big step a few years ago to kind of go from that Canterbury half an hour kind of there and back trip to that hour there, hour back trip in Tonbridge. It was kind of a big step for me, especially when I'm so much younger than these athletes. It's kind of like I did feel like a small fish in a huge pond when I went to Tonbridge, but it's so good training with athletes that are better than you. Lewis and Harry, they've got their strong events and their slightly weaker events. So Harry is just so quick, so insanely quick. So doing any sprint session with Harry, you get pulled along just naturally. Lewis is incredibly skilled in the throws and in the 1500. He's probably one of the only athletes in the decathlon that could kind of race me properly in the 15. So running in sessions with Lewis is just brilliant. You've got a man right there on your shoulder, or you're just tucking in behind him. It's an insanely I'm insanely gifted to be able to train in that group. We've got the likes of Stephen Simmons, who's now just joined our group, I think earlier this year, and he's he's about a 7K scorer, so he's still miles above me, a bit further down than Lewis and Harry, but he manages to bridge that gap. It's great, honestly. You've got the whole group's coaching. It's great. You've got Lewis, you've got Harry, you've got Stephen, you've got the likes of David, who's Lewis's coach, and everyone's just giving everyone else pointers, which is just brilliant, because in the end of the day, we're all going to end up competing against each other at some point in the season or in the coming years, and we're all trying to help each other push. It's running with people quicker than you or throwing further than you. It's naturally going to make you want to perform better. And I don't think there's a better group in the country at the moment if you're trying to be a multi-eventer than to be at Tonbridge. It is brilliant. I look forward to every training session to train in that group.
Wow, that's some high praise right there. You kind of make me wish I started training with Tonbridge. But yeah, I mean, Harry kind of works with us as well sometimes on the blogs he does, and various other bits as well. I've not actually said this to you before, but he has spoken to me about you before, and it's nothing but high praise where you're concerned. Like, whenever your name's been mentioned, it's Reef's such a hard worker. Reef knows what he's doing. Like, Reef is so dedicated to what he does. So, you know, someone like Harry Kendall to say that, like, you're obviously up there, and we're doing something right. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind, and to motivate you, hopefully, for your coming weeks, months, and years. So, it does seem like you have a really great community there, which is obviously so important when it's an individual sport, as you were saying. Because obviously, like, you know, you have to be the best version of yourself, but it's a tough one, isn't it? Because, like you say, like, there are going to be times where you probably are going to have to compete against people you would consider your friends and your peers, and So how do you go about that balance actually? How do you recognize that you're training with some of the closest people around you, yet you still have to compete against them? How do you go about that?
It's weird. It's I think decathlon, if you've never done a decathlon, which I know a lot of athletes haven't, um, it's strange how friendly everyone is during the competition. Um, because there's not many of us across the country, and it's usually you see the same faces at all these comps. So you become very friendly with all the other athletes, even the ones you don't train with. You go to training camps with them, you meet them, and you do training sessions indoors during the winter because everyone has to go into the same areas. But yeah, it's really strange because you've got your best mate that you're competing with, and you're like, you want to help him in the comp. You want to be like, oh, you need to do this in the shot put, and you'll go flying. But then there's part of you that's like, well, if it goes really flying, he's gonna overtake me. And it's like, but I think everyone wants to help each other in the decathlon because I think everyone knows that someone else improves, you're going to have to step up your game, and hopefully people will help you do that as well. It's very unique in the fact that because there's so few of us, all of us want to see each other do the best that they possibly can, which is really nice. It's a really nice environment, but it is also it usually gets quite. Everyone seems to get a bit more quiet and a bit less friendly. The further on in the deck it gets, the tighter people get. By the time everyone's on that 1500 line, there's not many people cracking jokes anymore. It's kind of everyone's locked in, just thinking 3 1/4 laps. Just end of the day, we've got to get round. Yeah, it's really odd just trying to kind of compete with your best mates and kind of go like you want them to do well, but not as well as you every time. Like yeah, you can have a huge PB, but you can just be a couple of points behind me. That's great.
I think that's the ideal scenario for every athlete, isn't it? Obviously, they can be the best, but if your best friend has to be a few points behind, just so that you can say they're on the same sort of like wavelength as you, then happy for everyone involved, you know?
Yeah.
That must be like, yeah, I can't imagine it personally because athletics is like that, isn't it? Where, yeah, like you're competing on your own, but that camaraderie is still very much present. It's very unique in that sense. So I can't imagine that in any other, well, no other sports spring to mind when I think of sports where you're competing for yourself in most cases, yet you're still like really close with the people you compete with, and you could be really giving tips to each other, and like you would still want each other to do well, no matter how well you would want yourself to do. So it must be a weird thing to rack your head around because I must admit I don't know how I would wrap my head around that. I think it would take some time to get used to, especially when you're doing all these different events. Like you want to get PBs and all these different things, and like you want to do really well, but you want your friends to do really well, but not that well realistically because you want them really better than you. That's just a weird contrast. But you did say to us a few months ago that your main goal was just to progress, just to progress as best as you could. So how did you say you've done that, and what have been your highlights from these past few months? Would you say?
Um,
Right.
I feel that in the deck, it's very gradual progression, and in training, I feel that it's been a very gradual progression throughout this season, throughout the last few months, and even some of the performances on paper that don't look as good. If you look at Power of 10 on some of my more recent pole vaulting performances, they'll look really poor. They'll be like 3.4 meters. My PB is 3.7. But those comps have been going up in 40 centimeter jumps. So I've gone 3.4, and I'm really proud of my 3 attempts at 3.8. I'm getting closer and closer. Um, I'm really happy with the pole vault progression at the moment. I feel like I'm really kind of on the cusp of getting some big vault comps. Um, that's one of the huge things for me. Pole vault's very difficult to do. and very difficult to train for with this weird rainy weather that keeps coming in. I'm like, well, I don't really want to pull on the rain, and I'm not going up to Lee Valley because it's not actually winter. You have to kind of wait for it to be sunny. But yeah, it's kind of been ups and downs this year, but I'm really kind of happy with the progression overall. And I also think that as a decathlete, I've matured. I feel like in the past, I have been very, one event will go badly, and I'll just get so upset that the next event will be bad, and then the next event, and it will snowball throughout the 2 days. And I think that's happened in the past after the 100. The 100's not gone well, and then the next 9 events haven't gone well because I didn't run as well in the 100. Um, Whereas I feel like now I can kind of isolate each event and just take a step back, take a step forward to the next event, and just concentrate on one thing at a time, which I feel has definitely helped me in the more recent decathlons, like regionals last month, and the nationals this weekend that's just gone. Yeah, I think the progression hopefully keeps going forwards. But obviously, I need to try and fix my hamstring before I start thinking about PBing in any more events.
Yeah, that's a key consideration to have in mind for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited, actually, because like, you're obviously progressing and, still a hell of a lot more to come. So yeah, it's baby steps, and then onwards and upwards from there. So but yeah, honestly, Reed, best of luck with everything. And yeah, fingers crossed for you.
Thank you very much.